In the heart of an empire corroded by corruption, excess, and vanity, one man dared to live simply. While emperors sought glory and senators plotted for survival, he wrote letters. Mid Rome's luxury, he preached detachment. And at the center of the Colosseum of political and moral brutality, he raised a philosophy that would transcend millennia. His name was Lucius Annaeus Seneca, a thinker who lived among monsters and martyrs of the Roman Empire, and who, even while standing beside emperors like Nero, managed to leave behind a legacy of wisdom that still consoles hearts and strengthens minds today. Today you will understand why Seneca's words still speak louder than war cries, deeper than tyrants' decrees, and more eternally than the very marble pillars that upheld Rome. Seneca was born in Córdoba, Hispania, around 04 BC, but was raised in Rome, where he quickly stood out as a brilliant young man devoted to rhetoric, philosophy, and the natural sciences. As a young man, he fell seriously ill with severe respiratory issues, which forced him to confront life's fragility very early, and perhaps it was this constant nearness to death that made Seneca so aware of the urgency of living with purpose. One of his most repeated and piercing teachings is, "Life is not short, we just waste much of it." To him, the true problem was never the time we have, but how much we squander it on futility. In today's world, where time always feels scarce, this phrase by Seneca hits like a slap across the face of our procrastination. Seneca was much more than a Stoic philosopher. He was also a statesman, playwright, imperial advisor, and perhaps most surprisingly, an extremely wealthy man. But unlike most millionaires of his time, Seneca never idolized gold. He saw it as a tool, dangerous, addictive, and illusory. And still, he managed to remain wealthy while preaching detachment. Hypocrisy. Many thought so, but Seneca always answered these criticisms with philosophical elegance. It is not the man who has little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. For him, true poverty came not from a lack of possessions, but from the mental prison of endless desire. A teaching that, in our consumer-driven world, where status is measured by followers and success is confused with accumulation, remains hauntingly relevant. His political career had dramatic highs and lows. Accused of adultery with the emperor's sister, Seneca was exiled to the island of Corsica, where he remained for nearly a decade. Yet even in exile, he never stopped writing. And perhaps that's what most impresses us about his journey, the ability to transform pain into wisdom. It was there, isolated, humiliated, stripped of power, that he wrote some of his most profound treatises, including the Consolations, letters written to those in suffering. In them he wrote, "Adversity is the occasion for virtue, a lesson many only grasp after breaking, but which Seneca offered as a shield for those on the verge of collapse." But fate still held the most dangerous role of his life, that of tutor and later advisor to the young Nero. At first, Seneca believed he could mold the character of the future emperor. For a while he succeeded. The early years of Nero's reign were relatively balanced, partly thanks to the influence of Seneca and a general named Burrus. But soon, Nero's darker impulses took over. The philosopher began to see the monster emerging, and with it, his discomfort and impotence before the throne grew. Seneca tried to distance himself from power. He attempted to resign. But one does not easily resign from a paranoid emperor. They became trapped in a machine he could no longer control, watching his teachings ignored as the world around him fell into disorder. And then, like so many others who dared to live with integrity under tyrants, Seneca was accused of conspiracy and sentenced to suicide. His death was slow, cruel, witnessed by his wife and disciples, yet even then, dying, he stood firm in his principles. One of his final messages was a whisper that still echoes today. Death is release, not punishment. In his letters to Lucilius, a work many consider his philosophical testament, Seneca addressed everything: fear, anger, time, friendship, virtue, death. In one of those letters he wrote, "It is in times of hardship that great men are revealed." This isn't just a poetic quote, it's a summons. A reminder that moral greatness isn't forged in comfort, but in the furnaces of pain and conflict. A lesson we find even in our own time. When personal crises, pandemics, losses, and collapses force each of us to choose, harden or evolve. Seneca's impact didn't stop at the grave. His philosophy inspired medieval monks, Christian thinkers, Enlightenment leaders, and modern entrepreneurs. Seneca is quoted in self-help books, leadership seminars, emotional support groups, productivity podcasts, and even in Silicon Valley boardrooms. Because Stoicism, the philosophy he helped shape, is not just a theory of how to live well. It's a daily practice of emotional control, resilience, clarity of purpose, and resistance to external manipulation. In a world hypersensitive to chaos and public opinion, Seneca tells us, it is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult. Another of his famous quotes that circulates modern media like a mantra is, while we waste our time hesitating and postponing, life is slipping away. Here lies the core of his philosophy, urgency. Seneca never asked us to disappear. He provoked us to live with intensity, not in a hedonistic sense, but with clarity. For him, living well meant being free. Free from fear, greed, anger, blind desire, and that freedom, he said, begins within. No wind is favorable to one who doesn't know where they are going. That metaphor, so simple, yet brilliant, forces us to confront our inner chaos before blaming the world for our failures. And if there is one topic in his work that captivates most, it is his reflection on time. Seneca dedicated entire essays to this subject, but one of his most powerful passages reads, "All men wish to live long, but no one wants to grow old." Here he exposes the modern paradox of seeking longevity without depth. He invites us to a life that measures time not in years, but in presence, in awareness. To live well, according to Seneca, is to live now, not one day in the future. Seneca's relevance extends into the emotional realm. He speaks of anger as if describing social media. Impulsive, destructive, contagious. In his treatise on anger, Seneca defines the emotion as a form of temporary madness. Anger is a short madness. He believed emotional discipline was a philosophical duty. But this didn't mean suppressing emotions. It meant understanding their roots, questioning their validity, mastering our reactions. A priceless insight in an age where we are bombarded by stimuli, trolls, and polarizations that constantly throw us off balance. Even in love and friendship, Seneca had firm beliefs. He saw a true friend, not as one who flatters us, but one who corrects us. A true friend is another self. His view of others as mirrors reveals his belief in mutual growth. Friendship, like all things in life, for him, needed to have value, purpose, virtue. And if you think all this philosophy is too distant from reality, think about this. Seneca wrote while being hunted, thought while being betrayed, taught while being ignored, suffered while being judged, and still he never gave in to bitterness. He lived what he wrote and died as he believed, with dignity, with courage, with purpose. Every generation gives rise to new voices, new thinkers, but very few remain relevant for 2,000 years. Seneca is one of those rare exceptions, because he understood that human nature, at its core, does not change. Technologies evolve, societies transform, but fear, desire, rage, hope, vanity, and pain, these emotions still govern us. And that's precisely why his philosophy endures, because it speaks to what is most permanent in us. In the end, Seneca does not ask us to be saints or martyrs. He simply proposes that we be better, that we don't let life pass us by like a poorly rehearsed play, that we cultivate awareness, courage, clarity, that we accept what we cannot control and devote ourselves to what we can. Our actions, our thoughts, our responses. Seneca taught us that it's not the world that shapes us, but the way we choose to react to it. And that choice, that inner freedom, is the greatest power we have. That is why more than 2,000 years later, he continues to show us the way. If the wisdom of a man who lived among bloodthirsty emperors can still transform the way you think today, imagine the power the past holds to shape your future. Comment and share this video. And remember, at Vertex of Time, time is not just the past. It is a tool, a philosophy, a revelation. See you on the next journey.